Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
That would be awesome if you could. Just the sheet that has the track that is Monza.
Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Apex Racing TV and welcome to the 2024 Radical Americas Championship. Starting tonight and running all the way through to October, some of the best Radical drivers on iRacing will be fighting for wins, bragging rights, and a championship, along with a spot in the Radical World Finals later on this year. We have an all-star cast of characters on track that I'll be touching on all throughout the season, as well as on tonight's broadcast. You've got some of the names that you see every week here on Apex Racing TV for the official Radical Esports Cup Series. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the virtual commentary booth is my partner in crime, J.R. Gregory, and in the virtual production hall, we have our old friend Josh Wilkie. And now tonight, the opening round of the season comes to you from Monza, specifically running on the layout without that first chicane. It's the same course that we saw used this past week for the official races, and of course the opening races of the European Championship, which we saw live here on Apex Racing TV earlier today. In the European Championship races, we saw some drivers racing really hard, taking risks, and also getting some penalties for crossing that white line on pit exits. We saw a lot of drivers taking it hard, so I gotta wonder, JR, will some of these drivers change their approach after how hard they saw those drivers racing in the European Championship race, or are they just going to try and take it a little bit easier here tonight?
Well, you know, it always is an advantage when you're in a series where you get to see another group run first. I've been in the league for several years where that is the case, so you get to kind of watch other people be a guinea pig for you, and like the blend line is a good reminder. See somebody get a penalty, I think it's pretty unlikely that somebody's going to repeat that after seeing another competitor do it in our earlier broadcast. But in terms of risk taking, man, I gotta say, Ron, we did the public server on Friday, and what we're watching right here, we're watching Solorzano fly down the straightaway. It is so long, and we had trains of 4 and 5 cars, and the draft is so strong with these radicals. By the time we got down here into turn 1, 4 or 5 cars had kind of equal velocity, and it was really a matter of position, and it was really quite interesting. If you wanted to make something happen, you sort of had to take a risk coming into turn 1. So I'm not sure if we're going to see people being shy there. We certainly didn't on Friday, and we certainly didn't in the European version of this broadcast.
One thing I will say about the high speeds that we saw entering that first chicane, which on this layout is turns 2 and 3, we won't see bump drafting here because it's actually been banned by the officials. I'm a little bit split on them banning the bump drafting. I think maybe it's a bit of my, slight NASCAR fan kind of way of thinking about things, but it would have been pretty cool to see some bump drafting here in this series. But I understand the series admin saying, like, yeah, let's try not to have some bump drafting on the broadcast. I think it'd be pretty cool to see some of these radicals hitting speeds of about, God knows, probably about 165 heading into that first chicane, basically the hardest braking zone on this entire circuit here tonight. That's going to be a really good run regardless, going down, exiting the Parabolicas. We're seeing the number 12 car of Solenzano exiting Parabolica right now, going on to the back straightaway. With this layout that we have here, only 9 corners for these drivers to negotiate, but each of them are extremely challenging, and that first heavy braking zone is going to be real tough. We saw in the official race this past Friday here on Apex, we saw plenty of drivers coming to blows. We also saw that in the European Championship race here, so I gotta wonder. Well, actually, I say I gotta wonder. I am fairly steadfast and confident in saying that that first chicane, that first heavy braking zone, is going to be the trouble spot for all of these drivers here in the 2 races we have coming up tonight.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see some combination of kerfuffle, hargy-pargy, door bang, and whatever you want to call it. Very rough stuff there on Friday, as I said. And, you know, the draft here, it's really hard to describe. If you come out of Parabolica right behind somebody in front of you, you're going to pick up a half second, a second of lap time just getting pulled down the straight. So the draft is tremendous. And when you enter that turn 1, turn 2 rather, at a higher speed, that brake zone moves back. Your braking point, it moves back the faster you're going, and it's hard to keep track of that in the heated battle. And we definitely saw a few people on Friday overcook that entry and saw quite a bit of contact there in that turn 2-3 complex, and I'm expecting more of the same tonight.
And one thing that we have to keep in mind with those heavy braking zones, it can change quite a lot between the start and the finish of these races. We're currently in a 50-minute practice session. In a few moments' time, we're going to switch over to a qualifying session where these drivers have 4 laps to get the job done and try and set the fastest lap time they can. Then after that, that sets a grid for a 15-minute feature race. Actually, no, that's a 15-minute sprint race, my apologies. Then they move into a 45-minute long feature race where the results from the sprint race set the grid for that race. That's going to be a real tough one. I will say one thing about that feature race: pit stops will be enforced. They have fixed setups here in this series, so they will have to pit for fuel. If they didn't have the fixed stops and they could fill these Radical SR10s to the brim, they would be able to make it all the way on gas, but I appreciate the series admin throwing in a little bit of spite to this broadcast, adding a little bit of flamboyance in terms of the strategy content here for this race. So we do have pit stops to negotiate with here for this series. We are in that qualifying session right now, and we're going to see some drivers hit the track. Speaking of the drivers themselves, I'm surprised we haven't really mentioned this thus far. As I said in my intro, we have quite an all-star cast of a lot of the drivers we come to expect in both the official broadcast on Friday as well as some of the stalwarts from the series that ran in the America's Championship last year, including IndyCar race winner Richie Hearn. He is in this field as well. He won the... I'm trying to hawk him back in my memory now. This would be really embarrassing since I made a video referencing this win, but it was in 1996 Indy Racing League event at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, the first ever race of its kind at the newly rebuilt Las Vegas when they turned it into a 1.5 mile oval track. But we still have just a stacked field here of very talented race car drivers that I think is going to lend itself to some awesome racing here all throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. And I know I sound like a complete fanboy with these SR10s, but that not only do they enjoy to drive, they're difficult to drive super fast. I mean, if you're driving it at 10/10ths, you have to have outstanding car control. That rear end can snap and come around under power quite easily. No traction control on these cars, no anti-lock brakes. So when you see these, which you will see these radicals battling over that entry into turn 2, the first chicane, under braking, you're seeing some excellent use of the brakes and excellent car control. These radicals are an absolute handful, and to master this radical, you've got to be really a very skilled driver, without a doubt.
Oh yeah, just the balls you have to really push this thing to the absolute limit, even at this track, which is a little bit old school in its construction. You don't have a whole lot of asphalt runoff to speak of, besides that second chicane, which is actually the first on this layout. You don't have a whole lot of asphalt runoff to speak of on this entire circuit, which is a little bit of an old scan here on the iRacing platform. Mistakes will be punished quite severely here in both this qualifying session and the races we have coming up later on tonight. I have a feeling that this is not going to be the only race where we see a ban on bump drafting. I can imagine it'll play a factor throughout a vast majority of this season because these radicals just they just draft so well together. We've seen it ever since I think about season 2 of 2023, the first full season I covered of the radicals. The drafting that these cars have is just so fantastic. But here at Monza, you have that massive, long, flat-out blast, and it's disproportionately long here at this track, but he's still the 2 second longest straightaways, exiting the Lesmos and going into Ascari, and then coming out of Ascari and going into the Parabolica. Those are still really long straightaways, so slipstream is going to be so important, but that will play a role in this qualifying session because we do not have that here in this qualifying session. Single cars, these drivers don't have any sort of help from a draft, so we will see some of these drivers setting in much slower times here in this qualifying session when they're pushing at their absolute limit than we will see in this race coming up here tonight.
Yeah, that'll be a super interesting thing to keep an eye on. Josh just showed us the top speed of our last qualifier there. Looked like he was hitting about 164 going down that long straight there before the car is basically stopped by aero. So we'll take a look at some speeds during the race when that draft is working. And I'm almost ready to guarantee you we're going to see at least 10 miles an hour faster than that. So yeah, 175 down the straightaway in these little turbo 4-cylinder SR10s. Fantastic cars, and again, I strongly urge you to take one for a spin. If you don't want to pay for it, wait to the test session in between seasons, but they really are an absolute hoot.
These cars are an absolute riot to drive. I'm more of an open wheel guy myself, but in my experience driving this car, it is very challenging, but it's also really rewarding when you get it right. We're looking at the top speeds now, and you can just see how much these drivers are hauling the mail, going down these long straightaways, just tickling the 170 mile an hour barrier, 169s, 165 for Odo, your pole sitter right now. So he's a little bit slower on that top end, but still he is setting a very good lap time right now. That's one thing as well with this series that we would see if we had open setups here, which I'm a little bit I mean, I can't say I'm too disappointed that we don't have fixed setups here because we do have pit stops to contend with. However, I wish it would be cool to see how much top speed they can irk out of these cars. I was hearing some discussion in the Radical community this past week just in reference to the officials talking about that and how they are hitting about 180 miles an hour if they took out all the downforce they possibly could. But it's a little bit shocking seeing the variance in that top speed there, even with these fixed setups.
Yeah, I am surprised by that. I think we saw 170 on that list there, so I'll have to amend my previous guarantee of seeing one. So we might see a $180 in this one with the draft today run. I'm looking forward to that, and we'll try to keep an eye on that situation for our viewers just to kind of help you appreciate the massive slipstream effect of driving these SR10s.
And it's Vieira going to the top of the board now, over halfway through this qualifying session, this 10-minute session. We are 5 minutes and 45 seconds in, and it's Lucas Vieira, the Brazilian, driving the number 8 car for Team SR8. He is at the front of the running order right now. I haven't mentioned this thus far, but we do have this race split into different categories. We have the pro drivers and the AM drivers. The pros you can distinguish from the small little green ticker next to their name, and the AM drivers you can recognize from those small little red ticks next to their name on the left-hand side of your screen on that leaderboard. But still fairly close this field is currently. The last place runner currently in this qualifying session, P19 Pires, is currently at a 140.5, so him being not, I mean, it's still a pretty big gap, all things considered. We'll see if he can possibly improve on his lap time here in the dying stages of this qualifying session. Actually, no, he will not be improving his chances of improving his time. He will not be improving the looks of his car either. I don't think that's a very ugly SR10 after that contact with that inside barrier. But still, fairly close this field is currently, with the exception of Pires and P20 now. The field is still really close. Currently, P19 is at a 138.4. So extremely close right now. The whole field, 19 cars currently, separated by less than 2 seconds. It's an incredible feature of these SR10s races, whether it be here with the Americas Series later on, actually earlier on this evening, my apologies, with the European broadcast, or with the official series that we see every single week here on Apex Racing TV. The field is just so close week in and week out.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, and just look at the top 15 cars around that is less than a second for 15 drivers across both classes. So very tight field, and we know what this kind of tight grouping is going to lead to, especially on a track that has a lot of slipstream effect, and we're going to see some trains. So I hope you brought your train whistle. We're going to be seeing plenty of that this afternoon.
Looking through the YouTube chat, I hear some viewers here on the stream on Apex Racing TV asking about the gray with some of the drivers. I believe that would be Reeve there. Let me take a look at my live timing screen right now. That would be Reeve currently sitting in P19. You can see P8 runner and P14. They have a small little gray ticker right next to their name. I believe there's some sort of graphical error. The people in charge of our graphics didn't load in the correct little ticker in time, so unfortunately I don't think... Actually, no, you can say that. You can see now Reeve has a little bit of a ticker next to his name, at least on my screen currently, so I think we're getting that... small little graphical error fixed right now, so we apologize for the small little gray tickers right next to their name, sticking out a little bit like a sore thumb here, but still regardless. Hunter Reeve currently P16 in this qualifying session. We're running on board, we're following Anope going down the start-finish straight away here, exiting Parabolica. You can see him so close to that inside pit barrier, just trying to shorten his run as much as he possibly can, taking that start-finish line and ending their lap. So you can see still a little bit of shaking right now. The field is closing up quite a little bit. You can see the drivers towards the tail end of the running order closing in those lap times and improving quite a lot. Pyro's still at a 140.5. I don't believe he'll be rejoining the track in the dying stages of this qualifying session. It's looking very good with Vieira. With 1 minute left to go in this session, he is still at the top of the board.
Yeah, and you're right, Ron. The field is tightening up. But now we're 1 through 19. Just over 1 second, 1.1 second, separating all of those cars. So we are in for a treat today watching these Radicals battle. If this is your first Radical race, you're definitely in for a treat. The cars are super fun, and you're gonna see some action, gonna see a little rubbing, gonna see some risks, and gonna see some good racing today.
Good racing indeed, and we're going to see the first little tidbit of it in just a few moments time once this qualifying session wraps up. We still have only a few more drivers left circulating the track. Joel Jacklin right now, P18 in the number 25 car, about to go through Ascari for one more time. The qualifying session is going to run out in 3, 2, 1. Time is at the 10 minutes are up in this qualifying session. All the drivers have had to go back to the pits, and we're going to get the starting grid for you for this first sprint race of the season here for the Radical Americas Championship here in 2024. And it's going to be Lucas Vieira grabbing the pole position, Odo in second, Harmon in third, Zuccarelli there in fourth, Solorzano there in P number 5, Inope, my apologies, I probably butchered that pronunciation already. He is in P6, Moncando in P number 7, Avantes in 8th. That's going to be Volkiel in P9, and Klausing rounding out your top 10. We're going through the rest of the field now. It's Harris, Benolid, I probably butchered that pronunciation yet again. He will be in 12th. That's going to be Richard in 13th. Dion Dirani, I probably killed that pronunciation as well, in 14th. Jason Potter in 15th. You can see the rest of the field, and you can see the field already on the starting grid here. All these drivers lining up very quickly. 21 cars will be taking the start here in just a few moments' time to kick off this season. Seeing a little bit of mind games, seeing some of these drivers flash their headlights already, trying to psych out each other right before the start of this race. 15 minutes for these drivers to negotiate in a few moments' time. It's a little bit of a quick race here, so it's going to be real punchy here, so hopefully all the viewers watching this stream here on Apex Racing TV can really stay up to date and keep with the flow here for this first race. We're going to get the lights coming on in just a few moments' time, and then after those lights come at, the season here is going to kick off here for the Radical Americas Series in 2024. We're just waiting for some more drivers to take the starting grid. We are waiting, it feels like forever, especially if you're the pole sitter, just waiting forever for those lights to appear on your screen so you can get this race underway. This like small little like minute and a half time feels like forever if you're on the pole. It's the little mind game tricks that I mentioned just a few moments ago, so we're still waiting for some of these drivers to join the grid. There we go. We all have all the drivers on the grid now. The lights are going to come on in a few moments time, and then after those lights come out, the drivers are going to be on their way, which they are now. Pretty good start there from your pole sitter of Vieira. Some shuffling farther in the back, some spinning farther down the back. A driver already in the barriers, and you can see another driver off the track already basically stopped on the grass there very early on in the race. Not the day and not the way that any of those drivers want to kick off their season, but it's a very good start for your pole sitter Vieira. You can see some three-wide action farther behind them. All these drivers are tussling for position. It's going to be real tense stuff here heading into the chicane. The first time around, we're going to see, are these drivers, they're going to risk it going side by side here. Try not to hit those curbs, which can upset these Radical SR10s quite badly. We have some spinning and some crashing farther in the back all throughout the field. We had an action there, we had a crash there going through the chicane and then coming out of the chicane as well. You can see body parts flying all over the road, body parts from the car, not body parts on the driver. That'd be really unfortunate if it was body parts from the driver, but still a lot of action very early on in this race. We are expecting some of these drivers maybe to take a little bit easier after we saw the chaos in that European Championship race earlier today, but as we just saw with 2 crashes in the span of about 10 seconds, that is definitely not the case here.
Yeah, and oh my
more
goodness,
tussling.
Another big hit on the barrier going into Ascari there, and that is, you know, these Radicals call for patience. There's no pace lap, no warm-up lap. They're dead cold on the tires, and what we're probably going to see here going through turn 2 is maybe getting on the power a little early, causing the car to turn. Ooh. Oh my goodness. And Zuccarelli definitely had some help there. He had a good looking outside entry into turn 2, and around he goes. So he's going to be looking for somebody to talk to about that transaction. I think he may have towed. He's right now sitting in P19. Oh my goodness. Brakes, who needs them? Holy cow. And Zuccarelli, that will drop him 15 positions. A couple of people in the back are minus 15, and Luis Perez is the guy you saw spinning off on the grass on the straightaway. And
Vieira, your leader, off
in the pits.
Vieira went off there heading through turn 1. Not sure what in the world happened to him. We'll have to take a look at a replay. We already have a bunch of drivers. Oh, another driver spinning, going through the chicane that time by. That is Hunter Reeve. Oh, another driver spinning, exiting the corner. These Radicals are just so tricky to drive. Some more donuts in the back as those drivers trying to get spun around in the right direction. But these Radicals are just so tricky to drive, especially on those cold tires. We've seen drivers outbraking themselves, spinning around and beating into each other already. Well, with all that chaos going on, it's allowed the number 617 of Eric Harmon to grab the lead of this race. He wasn't a driver that we saw running at the front of the race. He wasn't running at the front of the qualifying session, up 2 positions from where he started this race. Currently the P3 runner up 11 from where he started. So a lot of these drivers clawing through the field, cutting their way through like a hot knife through butter. And I think we may have some quick little replays to show, if I'm not mistaken, of some of the action and some of the chaos, I think would be the better word. We're seeing some action here going into Parabolica. 4 cars, you can cover them all with a blanket here, folks. Exiting Parabolica, we'll see them going side by side, basically 2 by 2, exiting that final corner and going on to that start-finish straightaway. Harmon still leads as the battle here outside the top 5 here. We're following Vieira, who may be able to overtake about 3 cars in the span of one single straightaway. Zuccarelli is farther up the road. He'll have to be very careful to avoid checking any of these drivers up. That was a hip check there from Vieira. He nearly got a one-way ticket into the grass and a one-way ticket into the barrier if that was any harder contact between himself and the P3 driver of Deoneri there in P number 3. Ooh, we can see now the drive. Ooh, nearly a spin there from your drivers running up towards the front. We're looking at a replay here. This was the incident with Vieira on lap 2, heading through turn 1, second time by. I think there might have been a little bit of contact. There was, yeah, just a little bit. It was a lightest tap there. I think there could have been a little bit of netcode involved in that as well. Just, it's the matter of pixels here in these races that decide these drivers' fate. And unfortunately there, for your one-time leader of Vieira, the chips did not fall his way there.
Yeah, my goodness. And look at Odo and Harmon driving off a 5-second gap behind Harmon back to Vieira. And their lap times are dropping as well. And now you're seeing the advantage of that draft working right now. Harmon has actually now set the fastest lap at 1:36.59 as he and Odo drive off into the sunset here as the time is quickly ticking down on this 15-minute sprint.
I'm just looking through. I tried to look at for an extended period of time while you're talking there, JR, and it's Dianarine there. I'll go with that pronunciation moving forward on this broadcast. He is pulling a little bit of a block there. He's involved in this fight. He's dropped back a little bit there, currently running there in P5. He is caught up in this massive train of cars, a slipstream train involving your, at one point, wrecked car there in the back. You can see 3-wide action here. Vieira had to back out. That Klausing is now trying to stomp on Vieira there to reclaim that position and move back into the top 5. This is a battle we got to keep our eyes on, and it's still heating up here. Heading into the chicane, it's going to be a very tense move here. Okay, so it looks like that Denarine held off that challenge there very briefly. But still, a lot of drama already in this race. I think we may have a quick little replay to see that chaos that ensued in the chicane the first time by. Fingers crossed this was it, because there's a lot of stuff going on there on that lap 1. I feel bad for our producer, Josh, who has to be like a chameleon, looking at 8 different things at once.
Yeah, very rough stuff here. Again, coming down here in heavy traffic on those cold tires.
Taking a look at an aerial view now of the incident heading into the chicane. I think it was just a little bit of a stack up. Oh yeah, you can see went into the grass. Oh, that is completely avoidable there, if I'm being brutally honest, there from the Luma Racing driver. But hey, it's lap 1. All these drivers are trying to avoid an accident. That was really evasive action that we saw there heading into the first chicane. Just really misjudged it, and sadly a lot of good race cars got wrecked there. So all those drivers that drop back like a rock, especially Zuccarelli currently running in P20, that really hurt his chances to try and have a good starting position in the feature race in just a few moments time. The action is still heating up here for that final podium position. Denarine currently running in that P3 spot, trying to hold off a challenge from your P4 runner. Meanwhile, I think Vieira is probably the driver I'm keeping an eye on here in this fight. He's a driver that we've seen sporadically in the official series broadcast here on Apex Racing TV, Fridays 2100 GMT, 5 p.m. Eastern. But still, he's a name that's always been up towards the front in the very few races that he has done. He's a driver that tends to keep it clean, gets involved in very few incidents, and just tends to hit his mark. So we'll see if he cracks under pressure in this fight.
Yeah, and speaking of keep it clean, look at Klausing there in our AM category, has pushed his way all the way up to P6. He qualified pretty well at P10, but managing to keep his nose clean and avoid the spinning radicals, flying body parts and clouds of smoke that we've seen thus far, and pushing his way further. Oh, he just turned green on me. I thought he was interesting. Our timing tower, I thought, had him as is glitching out on us a little bit, but in any event, good work by Klausing, who's moved his way up through at least a couple of accidents there from the start.
Look at a replay here of a pass for the lead. We're following Odo going down the back straightaway. This is a pass for the lead here from Odo. We'll see just going down that start-finish straightaway. Low bit slipstream. He couldn't do the bump drafting because that is banned, so he's just trying to pull off the move here and does it fairly successfully there. Just cleared him without any sort of challenge there from Eric Harmon, who's now regained the lead there. So he's running in P1 right now. It's still pretty close between the two of these drivers. We're 8.5 minutes into this 15-minute race, and we've already seen so much drama devolve here. And just touching on the small little issue that we have here with the graphics, your current P4 runner of Denarine is actually the leader in the AM category, so we apologize for the small little glitch on our end. We apologize for that, but he is the top runner of the AM drivers currently, even though it doesn't really show that he's currently in green currently, but he is an AM driver. You can actually see, maybe it's a little bit different from my perspective compared to what the viewers see, but you can see a little A next to his name there on the bottom left-hand corner to distinguish the AM and the pro drivers. You'll see a P for the pros and an A for the AM. So there's a massive train of cars that we see right now. I mean, how many cars are involved in that? I'm just looking through my lifetime. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is ridiculous. That's, I mean, it's something we come to expect from these radicals, but I can't say gimmick. The novelty of it never really wears off either, JR.
Yeah, it is pretty impressive, and it's just part of driving these cars, and the drivers are aware of that, and they know. I mean, it kind of puts extra pressure on you to make sure that you maintain that gap. You can't let the guy ahead of you get too far away when you come out of Parabolica. If you're a second or more behind, you're going to miss the train and probably going to be late to work.
Ooh, here we go. I thought we were going to see a move here from Eric Hartman to take the lead. Not Eric Hartman. Eric Harmon, my apologies. Heading into that first chicane of this lap, we may see a move here between the drivers trying to grab that final podium position. Overall, Benelide currently running in that P4 spot. He has tried everything in the book. He has thrown everything at the wall to try and get that move done, but it just has not stuck. And I think he is slowly falling into the clutches of Vieira in P5. I think Vieira feeling a little bit itchy, probably a bit disappointed after how it was looking like he was on his way to a surefire victory. It just has small little spin there, a little bit of contact there, and it really just decided his race. And sadly for him, after that small little spin through the gravel trap, he's just been caught in this fight ever since. But I think he is smelling blood in the water. Benelide at this point in the race, I don't really have a whole lot of confidence in him holding onto that position. But again, it's the world of motorsports. We still have 4 minutes left to go. Anything could happen between now and the checkered flag.
Yeah, and there's Dianarine working the weave there, considered blocking under some rule sets. Not here, but it is not enough. And there goes Benelide, working pretty hard to get up there into P3. May have been working a little too hard around. I think there's probably at least 3 laps remaining, and feels good to get that move done. But guess what? You're a sitting duck now to the draft, and here's a line of 4 cars that are going to stream past Benelide after all the work he did to get that position. He's going to lose it all here before we get down to turn 3.
Vieira in the grass going down the start finish straight away. I think he'll be able to clear the both of them going into turn 1. Yes, he did. That was a beautiful move there from Vieira to claw into the podium places once again, but it's still not over. You can see Denarine going for a move here, going into the chicane, and he gets it done. I think he might have overbrake himself. He did. Ooh, very close to make contact, boys, here. Oh my God. I saw a very shallow entry there from the P4 runner. I was expecting those 2 cars to just spear off the rope, but the battle is still not over yet. They're still going side by side, going through Lesmo number 1. We'll see if they go side by side here, coming through Lesmo 2, and you can see Vieira had to back out that. If he held on to that, and if he got that move done and it stuck, that would have been one of the best and most ballsy moves I've ever seen in my nearly year of covering radicals here on Apex Racing TV. He basically had all 3 or 4 wheels in the grass, just getting that move done, and that was some excellent stuff there from Vieira, but the fight is still not over.
Yeah, and I'm not the greatest F1 historian, Ron, but I have a dim memory of Michael Schumacher dipping a tire in the grass at that very spot. So we'll have to go back through the archives and see if that's correct. But yeah, absolutely huge move. And here we go. Benelide is back. He did lose 3 positions the last time down the front straightaway. Managed to fight and get it all back. Coming through Parabolica, we're back on the main straight, and he's built about a 0.4 gap, so he may be able to hold off this train behind him, but my goodness, look at our timing tower, though. That gap ticking down, and Benelide's going to be a sitting duck again.
Now we're seeing some tussling here for the front 2 drivers. Ooh, Harmon nearly making contact with Odo heading into the first chicane there. This is going to be a hard fight. We have 2 laps to go here. They're going to be taking the white flag this time by, and I'm not really sure if Odo will be able to pull it off. Maybe he's just been sandbagging throughout this race. Reeve has managed to claw his way through the field. He is currently running in P4. He was one of the rear gunners of this fight, but he just clawed through. I'm not really sure what in the hell, what kind of magic he managed to pull off to claw through. I think we may have a replay to see how in the world he managed to go through. It was probably about like 4 cars that he had to go through in a very short series of circumstances. I think, yes, so we do have a replay to see what he did here. Going down the start finish straight away, very reminiscent of what Vieira did last time by, going 3 wide here, going down that start-finish straightaway. Usually they'd be braking for that first chicane, but nope, they're driving right past it, and Hunter Reeve just drove past all of his competitors there, going down that start-finish straightaway. He just was so close to clearing all of them there. That would have been awesome, nearly making contact. Heading through turn number 1, that would have been a disastrous run if they made contact going through corner number 1 there, but they're going to be taking a white flag this time by, and there's just so many storylines. Ooh, some very interesting interpretation of track limits going through Parabolica for the second to last time. I gotta wonder if some of those drivers picked up a slowdown. We're seeing some battling here for the lead here. Odo has cleared Harmon going down the start-finish straightaway and heading into turn number 1, but still not over yet. Harmon is going to be in that draft, and he may try and go for a move here to reclaim that P1 spot. Going into the chicane is going to be a battle of the last late breakers heading into the chicane, and Odo manages to pull it off there. I was expecting him not really to be able to pull off the move there, but Harmon with a small little drift exiting the chicane. It's looking very good for Odo. Ryan Odo, for the Team ECR driver, is looking that he's going to claim the win here in this race, and we have some synchronized spinners coming through turn number 2, that first chicane for one last time. Hunter Reeve, his fantastic drive all comes to naught here. He's going to have to be stopped on the side of the road for what feels like forever if you're behind the wheel, just waiting for all of his competitors to stream by. He's seeing his chances at a podium fade away. I think that was a mistake there. Is that Vieira, if I'm not mistaken, that's dropped back like a rock? Yes, it is. Vieira made a mistake coming through the first Lesmo, and he's dropped back like a rock. I think we'll take a look at a replay to see what in the world happened to him. Clip the wheel in the gravel, clip that inside barrier. I think Lewis Hamilton wrecked there back in 2009, and unfortunately Vieira copying the Brit, the 7-time world champion, but the champion of this race is looking to be Ryan Odo. Harmon is just too far back to even attempt to go for a move here in the dying stages of this race. So it's going to be Ryan Odo taking the first checkered flag of the season. The American in the number 115 car, weaving and flashing his lights, taking the win in the first sprint race here. Eric Harmon finishing in second. It's going to be a battle. It was going to be a battle, I believe, for the last podium position. I believe it'll be Abantes taking the final podium spot there, 14 seconds back of the leader. So it just shows you how hard those drivers were battling for those last podium spots. They let the front two just drift off into the distance, driving off into the sunset. A very dramatic way to kick off this season, but I don't think I would have it any different.
Yeah, that was just nuts. And looks like we're going to take a look at Abantes here. He's going to make a move here late. Oh, there we go. And yeah, that's going to hand Abantes P3. Vieira's little mishap there. And my goodness, isn't your heart broken for Hunter Reeve? He's the one that made that epic multi-car pass on the straightaway coming up to the entry to turn number 2 there. And driving out of Carolina, he pulls the Carolina barbecue on his rear tires in that chicane, lights him up, turns the car, and falls all the way back down. He was up 14 positions there, driving in the top 5 before that last lap mishap, and you know that hurts.
Oh, that had to have absolutely stung. You gotta feel bad for the guy, but overall, he put together one hell of a race. There's a low vote in the Radical community after these races for Driver of the Day. If Reeve managed to pull it off, I think he would have been my mention there because he put on a fantastic drive there. Just a little bit of bad luck cost him there, and we're going to take a look. He may try and go for redemption here in this feature race, which is just starting in a few moments' time. We're getting in the starting grid now. It's going to be Odo, Harmon sharing the front row, Abantes in P3, Clausing in 4th. We didn't talk about him throughout that race, but he finishes in P4. I'll start this feature race in P4. Then it will be the P5 starter there, the top finisher of the AMs. That will be Delarani finishing, starting this race in P5. I've said his name basically different every single time. Richard in 6th, Moncada in P number 7, Potter in 8th, Jacqueline in P number 9. Then it's Ben Lead running at your top 10, who also dropped back like a rock after that incident in the dying stages of that race. We're looking through the rest of the grid. There's going to be Louis Pires, who is actually not going to be taking the start. He disconnected midway through that race. After that, I think he was a driver that went off at the very early stages. Got a little bit of wheel spin off the line, clipped the barrier, and decided to call it an evening here. So unfortunately, only 20 cars that are going to be taking the start here in just a few moments' time. And it's going to be a very dramatic, if it's anything like the sprint race that we just saw, it's going to be hectic. The 5 lights are on, the drivers are on their way. Very long run until they have to slam on the brakes there, so the brakes are going to be freezing cold, as will the tires, so it's going to be really challenging for these drivers to get through lap 1 clean. Fingers crossed they get through cleaner than they did on the first time by in that sprint race, but it's a pretty good start there from Odo, your pole sitter. We're seeing a challenge here from the number 14 there. You can see trying to go for a move around the outside. Harmon dropping back to P3. We'll see a possible challenge for the lead here, heading into turn number 1 for the first time by, the first chicane, my apologies, for the first time by, but it's going to be Odo holding off that challenge. I see some 3 wide action farther in the back. The driver that was running in P2 just spun exiting the corner. He lit up those tires at the Carolina Barbecue, as you mentioned at the end of that sprint race there, JR. The Carolina Barbecue tires coming to affect another driver here very early on into this 45-minute race. Wow.
Yeah, and my timing tower just is lighting up like a Christmas tree right now. Somehow Lucas Vieira has jumped up 8, if that's right. He's all the way up to P4. I'm not really sure what was going on with that start, but Vieira got an epic start, or people near him started poorly. And yeah, here's Vieira now entering into that first chicane, watching the P1 spin off in front of him. That was certainly a freebie for him, but yeah, he gridded up in 12th, and looks like he's picked up 8 positions, unless my lion eyes deceive me.
I think he managed to do that just in the run between the start-finish line and turn number 1. I think he just had a fantastic start, picked up the slipstream, went 3 wide with a lot of these drivers, showed the boldness that he showed in that sprint race, and just managed to claw through the field like a hot knife through butter from my untimely squeak as he just barely missed the stopped car going through that chicane the first time by. That was very close there to Vieira being taken out of the race. But still, a lot of these drivers maybe taking it a little bit easy. They realize that there's still so much left to play for in this race. I say that. It's now Harmon jumping into the lead. Odo dropping back a little bit. We've got battle here for all the podium positions. Some drivers going 3 wide farther in the back. We're following Vieira running in P4. Here's our camera car of this fight. You can see drivers going side by side, drivers spinning farther in the back and making contact with each other. That is actually, that is not the, I believe that's Jacqueline that was spinning and making contact with some of his competitors. So a lot of drivers spinning through that first chicane already in this race. We outlined it at the start of this broadcast as that being a real big challenge in this race, but of course I mean, we were expecting that corner to be a challenge. It has produced that in tenfold here in this race. I think we'll take a look at a replay of the just storming drive that Vieira had to claw up those positions at the start.
Yeah, riding along with him, and sure enough, there he is in P12. And wow, some great clutch work there. He just gets a better launch run, and as I said, no traction control on these radicals, icy cold tires, and Vieira putting on a clinic and getting that radical off the line. That was worth 8 positions on the start. Holy cow!
That was absolutely beautiful. We're taking another look now. I mean, that man put on a fantastic start there, and he's certainly, it's playing him dividends right now, currently running in P3. He may lose that on that spot. Odo clawing his way back into the front. We're going to see basically a 170-mile-an-hour game of leapfrog in this race. We're going to see plenty of drivers clawing their way through the field. We're riding on board with the P3 runner. This is a number 244 car of Dianari in P number 4. He's the camera car of this fight. Right behind that, some interesting interpretation of track limits farther in the back. A lot of action to go through in this race, a lot of action that's happened already. We still have 20 cars on track. Moncada had some kind of incident. I believe he was caught up in a small little schism there. I believe he actually clipped Jacqueline's spinning car not very long ago, if I'm not mistaken. So he's dropped back like a rock, currently 42 seconds back of your leaders right now. But a lot going on in this race. We're expecting some of these drivers to take it clean. I think we have a slowdown here. That would be Harris, if I'm not mistaken, that is slowing down. Going down that back straightaway, yes, it is Harris in the number 12 car, currently running in P12. And yeah, that was a quick little slowdown that he picked up on the exit of the second Lesmo, my apologies, and just cost him a lot of positions. We've seen so much in this race. We're still seeing so much. These drivers may go 3 wide, heading into Parabolica, but we still got pit stops to contend with. Ooh, and I think we nearly saw a little bit of contact there. Going into Parabolica, we nearly saw 2 cars spinning wildly off the track. Jason Porter, I believe, was the one that got hit in that small little schism in the braking zone of the Parabolica. We may see him trying to return the favor. Again, you can't bump draft here in these cars. The race officials will count any sort of bump draft as just normal, like, rear end contact, so they will not tolerate any sort of bump drafting whatsoever. They will tolerate 3 wide action going into turn 1. These drivers do not fear death here in these radicals. It is awesome to see because racing is fantastic so far, and we're only 5.5 minutes into this 45-minute race. I gotta wonder if this is a sign of things to come.
Oh my gosh. Meanwhile, who is the driver of the day? Look at Vieira now, Ron. He's 0.5 into P1. Vieira going through this field like a hot knife through butter out of P12, only on lap 4. Holy cow, what is going on?
That is unbelievable. That is unbelievable. As our producer Josh just said, he is ripping it right now. We're taking a look at a replay. I think he's getting 2 cars in one shot here going down the start-finish straightaway. Harmon pulls that to try and get the move done on Odo, and then Vieira just splits the difference there. Oh my God, that is a beautiful move there, and he cleared him. Well, I think did he clear him? Yes, he did. He cleared him heading into turn 1. Vieira, I think he may be my mention for driver of the day already because he has put on some storming moves, made some storming progress here in this race, and fantastic drive from him. Fingers crossed we don't see an incident that we saw from him in the dying stages of that sprint race, because that would be an absolute shame for a driver that's really the standout star currently in this race.
Yeah, that was nuts, and great camera work by our producer Josh. I mean, the draft is almost impossible to describe. You have to imagine a huge rubber band that's whipping you past the car in front, and you're suddenly going at 5-10 miles an hour faster, and you saw Vieira put that to work for him. And here's Enope going side by side through Curva Grande, heading into that treacherous braking zone for turn 2, and he's going to take it way inside. What a move. Oh my goodness. There is nonstop dicing up front here. Great driving there by Enope as he snags a position away on that tough entry to the first chicane. Good work.
Herman has sunk like a lead balloon full of, I think it's dihydrogen hexafluoride or something like that, like the heaviest gas known to man. He was running and battling for the lead very early on into this race. He's currently running in P6, and he has a gap of 4.1 seconds to the leader of Odo. Odo and Vieira have really pulled away. They currently have a 2.7 second gap between themselves and the P3 runner, whose name I will not say out of risk of embarrassing myself further throughout this broadcast. But they've pulled away. They've formed their own peloton currently, and with those drivers still battling hard right behind them, we've got a beautiful shot going down this back straightaway heading into Parabolica. And with those drivers battling ever so hard, I think these drivers are really in the catbird seat. They're going to be the ones that are going to see battle for this race unless we see some kind of chicanery with the strategy, which we could very well see.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Ron, we are only 8 minutes in. You can see it on our timing tower there. 8 minutes into a 45-minute race. Odo and Vieira definitely in good position. I would not be fighting if I was either of them. They can take turns being in P1, as you're seeing here, and just kind of take it easy. And one thing we haven't mentioned yet, Ron, is that tire wear is a thing with these radicals, and I'll be interested to see if any of these cars go up on jacks during their pit stop. I'm not sure if they can fuel and take tires at the same time or not, but 45 minutes is a long time to beat one of these radicals, and they will go through the tires, particularly the fronts.
Ooh, we got our first pit stop here. Abantes, who had that spin at the very early stages of this race. I will say one thing about the tire wear issue. This was interesting. I was hearing some of the discussion after the European Series race earlier today. They were saying that the tire wear on these radicals, they would wear about 30% before they hit the finish of these 45-minute races. So they had about 70% of rubber, 70% of meat left on them when they would take the checkered flag. So I don't think tire wear will be too much of an issue, certainly not much of an issue for these drivers that sacrificed some time, and maybe for some of the drivers that went for spins very early on. on, but tire management will play a big role in this race, just trying to have enough meat left on those tires before they take the checkered flag. Try not to go offline too much, otherwise you'll pick up what my dad calls OPR, I'm trying to think of how it goes now. Other people's rubber, OPR, there we go. My brain completely blanked. It's been years since my dad told me that. Try not to pick up other people's rubber if they try and go offline just a little bit. I think Harmon picked up a little bit of OPR on his tires not very long ago because he dropped back like a rock and is now clawing his way through the field quite nicely, trying to get a move done here to move into P4, trying to get a move done to move into the podium positions. Cleared 2 cars in one shot. It shows you how powerful the slipstream is going down that start-finish straightaway. Harmon using that to great effect here. Well, with that battling, that 4.1 second gap that he had to the leaders when he was running in P6 is still the same, and he's running in P3. It just shows you how the front runners are continuing to pull away in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, maybe next time down the front straight we can pull up some terminal velocities here. I promised our viewers some 180, so hopefully we're going to see that. But yeah, very interesting here. We weren't provided with the fuel burn stats or what the fuel level is prior to this. We'll probably have that information handy next time we see you for the next event, but looked like that pit window is open here pretty early, so they must have just needed a splash to finish the race. We did not see that car go up on Jackson, as Ron said. That percentage tread number is part of tire management on these cars, but don't forget the new tire model here at iRacing also takes into account overheating the tires, and that can impact them in a way that doesn't show up on any numbers in your pit box. So it could be a little more complicated than just the percentage left, but we'll see how we go as the race wears on.
We're seeing now Vieira maybe trying to size up a move to retake the lead of this race. You can see on the bottom right-hand side of your screen 165 miles an hour as he pulls out of the drift, trying to get the move done, stalling out at about 165 here, 164, 165, going into turn number 1. Well, meanwhile, falling Odo right now 168, I think I saw on that screen, 168 miles an hour. These radicals are really holding the mail here, going down that long flat out blast to kick off this lap. But Odo dropping down to P2, Vieira retaking the lead of this race. This is going to be a heads-up battle between the two of them. One of them is a Brazilian, one of them is the American. And they both started the 2 races that we have here tonight on the pole. Good Lord, we're looking at the left-hand side of your screen now. You can see the fastest speed that some of these drivers have hit, 179 miles an hour. Are you kidding me? Richard sets 179, currently running in P9 is Ryland Richard in the number 69 Flying Eagle Motorsports cars. That is a beautiful name and a beautiful number for that car, and a beautiful number in terms of how fast he's going in this race. And the driver right in front of him, Zuccarelli, who's clawed up his way through the field quite nicely, started towards the back and is now running in P9 after Richard just got moved on him, heading into Ascari, but he's still putting on a fantastic drive right now. The second fastest, so you can see a driver clash, that's a Benelide there that went off going through Ascari. I think a little bit of a curb whack there might have been the reason we just saw that Radical SR10 shoot off the track. We may have to take a look at a replay to see what in the world happened to the driver that was running pretty decently in this race, is now running down in P13. He was involved in that fight, involved in that train, trying to decide the final podium position, but just, ooh, it wasn't even a curb whack. That was strange. It just snapped on him mid-corner. We'll have to take a look at another replay, this time riding on board with him, because that was bizarre. I'll listen in this time by. Maybe he got on the power a bit too early? Ooh, yeah, okay, that's what happened. Got on the power a little bit too early, going through the meandering left of turn 7, got the rear end out a little bit, and just overcooked those tires just ever so slightly. The tire temperature is so sensitive in these Radical SR10s. You need to be in the right operating window, and if you just go over that or under it a little bit, you're in for a world of hurt. Anope has gone off there. He is dropping through the field quite terribly there, so I think he had to spin or maybe just outbroke himself heading into that first chicane. But that tire temperature is just so important in these races. We'll see the replay here of Anope heading into the chicane. I think he may have made contact with Harmon here, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, a little bit. Ooh, actually, he got bumped there. I think that was, who was that? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if we can take a look at another angle of that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was Denarine. Yeah, I think that was him. So maybe a little bit of damage on the front end of that Radical SR10. That may play dividends in his race.
Yeah, riding along now with Dion Areen, and I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but yeah, the guilty party there, and looking like he's looking for another victim.
Lockup.
And gets
Yeah.
one. Oh my goodness! And yeah, Ron, you're right. He may be carrying some damage, making that radical lose control under braking, or that's what I would say if I were him. But he may need to be tucked into the pits, take that splash of fuel, and get a fast repair to get that car driving right.
Yeah, that is one thing with these SR10 races that we'll be seeing all throughout these feature races here between now and October the 13th when the series wraps up. Because these drivers can really stretch their fuel as much as they can, the fuel is not really too dependent here. They can try and stretch it. There's a lot of open windowedness in the strategies that these drivers can use. So we already saw some drivers come into the pits fairly early on into this race, mainly Ohayon, currently running in P19. He was one of the drivers that came into the pits earlier on in this race, but I wouldn't be too shocked if we see some of the drivers running farther up towards the front actually pulling in just a few moments time. We are on 15 and a half minutes in to this 45-minute race, so we have less than 30 to go here. I gotta wonder, I think it was around the minute 24 barrier, if I'm not mistaken, when we saw some drivers coming into the pits during that European Championship race earlier on this evening on Apex. So I think maybe these drivers may do it a little bit different. We're definitely going to see some varying strategies here to decide this fight.
Yeah, and here we are back again with Vieira and Odo. They're enjoying a track day here in the Italian countryside, casually switching positions back and forth. And I'm guessing that by the time we get to the end of this one, the last couple laps, they will start scrapping then, but really no point in doing it now. They're saving fuel, they're driving clean, and they're driving away from the rest of the field. So Vieira and Odo just kind of owning this one at this point.
Speaking of one driver that's pulling away from all of his adversaries, Harmon is really in a fight of his own as we're seeing all the fighting all throughout this field. We're following this fight here. This is between Soloranzo and Zuccarelli. You can see involved in that fight. This is a massive pack of cars here. Some of these drivers up 14 positions from where they started. But with this battling that we're seeing for P4, Harmon currently in P3 is just pulling away. He's really in his own race. He's in his own zip code right now. So we're seeing a lot of hard fighting all throughout this field. Harmon, I think he's probably just on his phone at this stage. He really has no cars. The gap between himself and Vieira is about 3.5 seconds. The gap between himself and Solorzano there in P number 4 is over 5, actually a little bit more than that, around 6 seconds he has to the next car behind him. So I think at this stage he is really in a race of his own, in a fight of his own, just trying to whittle away the laps and not make any sort of mistake, because right now he's running in a really good spot. We're looking at a replay here involving Inope here coming through the Lesmos. I think there's just some hard battling here coming through. Oh, very close to contact there as Inope clears him heading in to Lesmo there, but some nice hard battling there.
Yeah, beautiful inside-out move there. I think that was Inope that pulled that one off really nice. Looked like he had gotten smoked there going into the first Lesmo, and he says not so fast, gives him the over-under and gets that one back. Fantastic move there and some really good driving. And I'll tell you, this pack of cars, here comes Zuccarelli. Looks like he's ready for his fuel splash. But, man, that pack of cars when they were lining up there for turn 2 into that first chicane, the stewards had their fingers crossed because they were running out of paper up there, but they got through there very nice and cleanly this time. So the drivers kind of settling in, and some of the kerfuffleage that we saw earlier has calmed down quite a bit here.
We're taking a look now of all these drivers coming into the pits now. We're looking at Inope, and you can see on the left-hand side of your screen the time that these drivers have taken in the pits right now. Zuccarelli is in 16.5 seconds. He spent stopped in his box, so I believe he is exiting the pits right now. We're going to see him get off that pit limiter and gun it, going down that start-finish straight away, rejoining the race. Am my eyes deceiving me? Is that Makonda? Okay, I was about to say Makonda I saw at a 1.9. I was going to say that is a absurd strategy if he's trying to pull that off. But still a fairly early stop for, well, a fairly quick stop from him. 12.2. That's a pretty quick stop there from the driver currently running in P13. With this, we've got to have a lot of action here. In terms of pit stops, you can see actually it was Makonda spent 12.2 just in just going through the pits itself, so that wasn't just stopped in the box. That was his time going through pit lane. So there must have been some sort of stop and go or some sort of penalty that he had to serve there. You can see 1.9, a 6.9 second pit stop from Abante, so maybe some kind of glitch on our end there, but still a lot of drivers you can see now. Solorzano here coming into the pits now here on the 13th lap of this race, 19 coming up to 20 minutes into this 45-minute race here. This is going to be when we see these drivers flood into the pits. It would not shock me in the slightest if we see Odo and Vieira come into the pits in the next lap or two. I gotta wonder, are these drivers going to come in sequence, or do you think they're actually going to split their strategies here, JR?
I have a feeling these two are going to come in together, and not to change the subject, Ron, but look at Inopi's time in the pit, over a minute. I saw that car go up. He definitely took tires, and it cost him. He is way, way down in the order, and I don't know if that was intentional or, you know, when you're in one of these races, you're presented with an array of controls and check boxes, and I guess it's possible he forgot to clear those tire boxes, and he definitely took tires and fell way down the order. So either he is a mad genius and is going to be putting down some crazy laps on those fresh tires, or he's kicking himself for mishandling that pit stop.
I have a feeling he might be kicking himself. Even though you have a massive advantage being on those fresher tires, he still has to just struggle through these first few laps, just getting those tires up to temperature, getting them worn in, getting all the solvents, well, the virtual solvents and resins and all that stuff off these tires, breaking them in, getting them up to temperature. He is struggling right now. He is just, it's every single section of a racetrack is where you struggle on those fresh tires. Certainly one driver not struggling. Vieira going for a move here as we see Richard coming into the pits, a fast man of this race, currently running in P8, pitting along with Harris as well right behind him. So we see some drivers coming in now. It wouldn't shock me in the slightest if we see Vieira and Odo try and pit this time by. That could be the reason why we saw Vieira try and force the issue and get that move done on Odo, going down the start-finish straightaway this time by. He has a 0.3 of a second gap between himself and Odo, currently a massive gap between themselves and Harmon in P number 3. So Harmon once again in a race of his own. Won't be too shocked if he comes in, tries not to do anything risky throughout his race on track or even in the pits. We're seeing some racing here on track, nearly going for a move here on Vocal. We haven't really touched on him all throughout this broadcast, but he has a very striking livery there on that Radical SR10, and he is putting together a pretty decent drive here. We're following Richard exiting the pits. The blending there of all those drivers is really tricky. That's going to be a nice little focal point here of this race, which I'm shocked we haven't mentioned already. But Vocal currently running in P6, putting on a pretty good drive right now. He has Ben Lead right behind him, who I think is seeing the red mist and is a little bit upset with how his race went there, so I wouldn't be too shocked if we see Vocal really on the back foot, trying to hold off on that challenge, up 11 positions from where he started this race, which is currently tied with Vieira up at the front. So very good race from the American, currently running in the 6th position in that number 34 car. So we're seeing some battling all throughout this field. Zuccarelli trying to claw through some positions here. We saw that it was a massive train of cars, but a really, I wouldn't say derailed. Actually, no, that would be a correct term. The train of cars derailed, and it led to a lot of drivers breaking up that fight, and really Harmon leading to the position that he's in right now in no man's land, essentially running aboard with Hunter Reeve, the standout star towards the end of that sprint race. He is now coming to the pits, so I think next time by, that's when we're going to see Odo and Vieira and a lot of these drivers come in.
Yeah, we're probably getting to the end of this pit cycle here. It looks like we've got about 22 minutes remaining, and there's another car going up for tires. Oh, that's going to be interesting to learn whether that's intentional or not. And is that Vocal up on Jax? Oh my goodness, Vocal may have done himself a disservice, as we saw Inope do earlier. I kind of doubt that's intentional. And look at that time, tick, 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 as he sits there. The cars stream by. Oh man, and that really hurts. And as an aside, Ron, I got to share with you that virtual resins was on my bingo card, so thanks for that.
My pleasure, JR. My pleasure. We're seeing Diego Zuccarelli trying to get a move done here to move into the top 10. Getting a move done here on Richard, does it successfully, heading into that first chicane. So the Canadian making his way up through the field. He's involved in a lot of the intricate workings to make this series happen. So we appreciate the hard work from himself and Sandro from Radical Sim Racing to really help this event happen. But we're coming to crunch time here. Harmon has come in. Odo and Vieira have not. That's a little bit surprising from me. Maybe they're just in a race of their own, saving fuel, maybe, perhaps, possibly. I don't know whether they're doing that intentionally. Vocal coming out of the pits now. 1 minute and 45 seconds. Oh no, I feel so bad about mentioning him because I feel like I just pulled off one of the worst commentator's jinxes in my racing career. Did he have a penalty there? Because that is... I mean, 1 minute, it wasn't like his entire time in the pits was spent on jacks unless he is being serviced by snails. There wouldn't be any reason why he spent 1 minute and 45 on pit lane, but he is still dropped back like a rock through the field. You gotta feel bad for the guy because he was putting on a good show, but sadly for him, it looks like it has all come to naught. We're following Eric Harmon. He's exited the pits in P4. Jacqueline has inherited that P3 spot. I believe we may be seeing Vieira and Odo come in. We're following now Denorine exiting the pits now. I think did he have a slower stop? I think he might have, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of these drivers having some slower stops here. 47 seconds. Bonte's at 37. I'm not sure if that's still glitched from our end. He spent in the pits. Maybe just took barely any fuel whatsoever, trying to pull off some weird kind of gamble where he's just clutching and coasting throughout half of the lap. But still, one thing that's shocking me is the fact that Vieira and Odo still have not pulled in. I don't know where they're on track right now. They're starting another lap. Have they just been able to save so much fuel just being in a fight of their own that they're able to stretch it this far? Or are they just out of their mind?
We were seeing it earlier on, and they're doing it right here. They are taking turns, swapping that lead back and forth, and that slipstream doesn't just let you accelerate around people. Vieira is off the gas right now. This is a complete tow into the chicane here. So they are both able to, by switching P1 and P2 back and forth between each other, massive fuel savings. Now, and again, I wish I could share the exact fuel stats with you. I doubt they're going to be able to fuel save for the entire race, but they're definitely working that to their advantage to build a huge gap behind so that there's not going to be any drama with regarding their pit sequence until potentially they hit some lap cars. Oh, we're seeing some good behavior there by Oyan there in P18, moving over for the leaders, and that could be the one thing, Ron, that would make Odo and Vieira decide to duck into the pits if they start hitting lap traffic.
Well, that'll play a huge role into this race. I will say, though, that is a little bit of crafty work there from the drivers that aren't teammates, but they're still acting like teammates. I think this is more teammate activity that I've seen from actual teammates in other series. In the Apex Racing Academy Formula 4 Championship, we've had two teammates come to blows 2 races in a row, but they're coming in now, so we're going to see. This is going to be the money stop from both of these drivers. Who saved the most amount of fuel? Who's going to be stopped in their box for the least amount of time? We're going to see, I believe, Vieira is going to be the first to get into his box here. Be very careful entering the pits and exiting the pits to be careful on that pit speed limiter button. Vieira's the first to stop in his box. Odo is coming up next. Be very careful not to overshoot your marks. I think that both of them hit their marks absolutely perfectly, so it's going to be the slowest drag race in the world, shall we say, to see if Vieira takes a little bit less gas. I'll keep my eye peeled out for him, see when he comes in. Vieira's on jacks. Oh no. Oh, and that is Odo already out of the pits. He is exiting. Vieira, I think he might have taken just 2 tires, but still 24.8 seconds, 10 seconds more than Odo spent on jacks. That may be the deciding factor in this race. We might have just seen it right there, folks.
Wow, and quite a gamble there, Vieira. I mean, he would have been longer if he would have taken all 4. So you got to think that he intentionally selected taking fronts there. And as I said, folks, these radicals will blow the front tires off right off. Particularly in these heavy braking zones that you're going to see right up here. So it may work out for him, and courtesy of Vieira, we may be seeing learning a lesson about these 45-minute races and these radicals from him. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that for you. Vieira taking tires, Odo going out on 4 old ones, and we'll watch their lap times and see how that unfolds.
Still think 10-second gap there, though. I don't have a good feeling about them really having any sort of pace to claw their way up through the field. That's just, it's too big of a gap as far as I'm concerned. We are at the 29.5-minute mark of this race, so we have about 15 and a half minutes left to go between now and the checkered flag, and I just don't think that Vieira has the time. It's such a shame, because honestly, as far as I'm concerned, Vieira was my pick to win. That man was on a mission during that sprint race, showed a lot of pace, got caught out there with a small little tussle that he had at the start of that race at Sem towards the back, but still in this race, he was basically faultless, really. He just put on a fantastic show, but sadly for him, just a small little unticked box. It's a matter of pixels when trying to move your mouse, driving a Radical SR10 at 110 miles an hour, and sadly for Vieira, it just cost him badly there, and it may cost him another position as we see Harman trying to size up a move, and I think he will be able to get the move done heading into turn 1. This is tough stuff from Vieira.
Well, and Ron, it may be a little early to call, because Vieira now has Harman with him, and driving as a pair, they may be able to catch Odo. I've seen crazier things happen. The draft is insane in these cars, and I'm telling you, from doing a practice session last week, I was picking up between a half a second and a second a lap if I worked the draft right. So it's possible they could close that down. I'm not ready to write off Vieira just yet.
Here's a real question, though. Are these drivers actually going to bother to work together, or are they just going to get lost in the sauce of battling for P number 2 and just get completely confused? Because, as you said, if they work together, they have a really good shot to catch up Odo, even though 10.8 seconds, that looks like a pretty big gap, and with all due respect, it is. But still, with 14 minutes left to go in this race, and how much the slipstream can help you at this track if you play it correctly, they could close that gap if they tried hard enough to do so. But I think it all depends on whether Vieira and Harman want to work together. I'm not sure if they're in cahoots during this race. I'm not hearing, not hearing any discussion. I have my iRacing in-race chat turned down. But maybe they have some kind of private discussion going on between the two of these drivers, trying to formulate some kind of strategy to make their way up towards the front of this fight. Vieira at this point has his tires heated up. They're in the right operating window, so he'll start to eat up on that fight as long as Harman is willing to work with him.
Yeah, and you see Harman closing down here as that gap plummets, and I'm telling you, this draft is huge. Look, he flies past Vieira like he's pulling an anchor, and if they continue to do that, they just have to pick up about a second a lap with about 9 or 10 laps remaining. So, I'm not saying that's likely, but it is possible, and, one little bobble by Odo as well. You never know what's going to happen, and that's why we run the races instead of ending it after qualifying.
Yeah, certainly can't say the same about the world of Formula One, but before we start a civil war in the YouTube live chat here on Apex Racing TV, I think we'll swiftly move on and try not to mention that series as much as we possibly can. Just looking through the field right now, Riva's on a fantastic recovery drive, currently running in P5. The driver that was a heartbreaker story during that sprint race is clawing up nicely, currently running in P5. We're seeing Vieira. The leapfrog game continues between these two, but with them working together on this lap, they have not closed that gap in the slightest. It's still around the same, about 10.8 seconds between Vieira and Odo. So I don't, it all depends on this lap car that we see farther up the road. I'm not sure who that is that's about to go. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's Clausing that we see farther up the road about to get lapped by Vieira and Harman here. But still, it's going to be tough. Yeah, it is Clausing there in the number 133. Driver currently running in P19, but I'm not really confident in what I'm seeing between Vieira and Harman. I think they may just start to battle for their own position. They're swapping positions again here. The gap is now 10.5 seconds between Harman and Odo, currently actually dipping below that now. Ooh, you can see last time by about a half a second quicker, but still, I just don't know. I don't have the confidence in these two, honestly.
Yeah, they may not have time, but we definitely saw Harman's lap time drop to 1:36.7. He's about half a second quicker than Odo there, but they really needed something more in the neighborhood of a second per lap. They're not looking like they're going to be able to get that done, but certainly a valiant effort. And, as we said, anything could happen. It's still plenty of time left. One little error and one little smooch on one of these unforgiving, brutal Italian curbs here at Monza, and the whole could turn the whole running order upside down very quickly.
Now, one thing I will say about the race that we've had thus far, and it's not really paying attention to any sort of fight, so we can just follow Ryan Odo running in a race of his own currently up towards the front of this field. We've seen a lot of drivers inexplicably come into the pits, mainly serving penalties, and this may be a little bit of a plea to the people behind the scenes putting together these broadcasts and helping us put on the best of a show we can here on Apex Racing TV. But I would really appreciate if there's any sort of way we can have those penalty messages pop up on screen. I've done the officiating for the Rennsport Touring Car Cup and the Rennsport World Challenge that's streamed here on Apex Racing TV every single Monday, and we have the penalties pop up. Unfortunately, here for the Radical Americas Series and the European Championship as well, we don't have those penalty decisions pop up in these races with live stewarding. That could be the reason why we see some plenty of these drivers inexplicably pulling into the pits. Currently running in P16s, we're seeing another swap here between Eric Hartman and Vieira. The driver running in P16 who was running in that fight up towards the front all throughout this race and all throughout the sprint race as well, has dropped back to P16, about 1 minute and 4 seconds back of the lead. I think we've seen some penalties for incidents that we saw earlier on in this race. Certainly the one for Denarine is very much likely the incident that we saw at that first chicane not very long ago, but still it'd be a little bit, just speaking from my own perspective, it'd be a little bit easier to follow if we had some little penalty messages that we could actually see on these broadcasts and show to the viewers at Apex Racing TV, so there's a little bit less confusion. But anyways, we are in the dying stages of this race, about 9 minutes left to go. It's looking very good for Odo, looking very good for Vieira, and looking pretty good for Hartman for them to finish on the podium. And I gotta wonder, at this stage, what is the fight that we have to keep our eyes on? I think it's this one with Richard, because he's showing a lot of pace currently running a P9, and this is the biggest train of cars we have all on track.
Yeah, and we have, looks like Reeves pulling a little train behind him as well. I got Reeve, Benelid, Zuccarelli, Solorzano, the commentators name challenge group there, all grouped together, and they're kind of tickling the back of the podium, so we're probably going to see some shuffling in that group before this one's overrun.
Yeah, the amount of butchered names that we've had so far throughout this broadcast, I may have to issue out several apologies in the hours after this broadcast, but still no apologies about the hard racing. We're seeing 3 wide here going down the start finish straightaway. There's going to be some hard stuff there. They actually fan out and they actually go 2 wide now, single file, so they all clear each other there, but still not over yet. Zuccarelli trying to get a move done here on Solorzano heading into the chicane. I think he may not be close enough unless he pulls off some kind of worldly move, which he isn't able to do on the brakes heading into that first chicane. Reeve is up to P4. He's called through the field nicely. He's involved in a fight with Harris there for the last 2 positions in the top 5. This has been some pretty hard stuff all throughout this field. Fantastic to watch. A great way to kick off this season as well, but it's still not over yet. In this fight, I have a good feeling about Zuccarelli because he showed a lot of pace in qualifying for the sprint race, but unfortunately got punted out of the way and relegated him down to a far-flung position in that sprint race for the finish and a far-flung position for the stars of this feature race. But he's still showing a lot of pace, currently running in P7. I think he's my driver to look out for here in this fight.
Yeah, Zuccarelli looking good, and he's all over Solorzano, and as coincidence would have it, both of those drivers plus 13, so they're sharing the hard charger honors thus far in this one. We'll see how that one turns out at the end, but yeah, both of those drivers, 6 and 7, are sitting at plus 13, so taking advantage of some mistakes by others, making some passes as well, keeping it clean, and good performance by all these guys.
What's great to see is that we're usually accustomed to the Radical Esports Cup as we're seeing these drivers go 3 wide, going down the start-finish straightaway. Zuccarelli trying to hold off a challenge here from Benelid, which is unsuccessful. going into turn 1. He'll be able to clear them, but still not over yet. We may see a challenge here going on the brakes. He pulled in, Zuccarelli pulled into that draft there to try and just close up to the back of the car there. Currently number 16, my apologies, P6 runner of John Benelid. And just touching on the point that I was going to mention before they decide to go 3 wide out of the blue, it's great to see here in these radicals that regardless of whether we're following the official broadcast here on Apex Racing TV, that I think it was about 18 laps, if I'm not mistaken, this past official week was, or whether it be these 45-minute long races, they are still action-packed from start to finish. So if you want to stay up to date on all the action-packed racing that we have here all week long here on Apex Racing TV, you can hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you've used YouTube for about 5 minutes, you pretty much know what to do to get notified of everything that happens here on Apex Racing TV. Following a Bantez dropping down below his way through the field, following Macondo there. Maconda, my apologies, I'm killing the pronunciations, man, good lord. He is currently running in P14, and meanwhile, Hunter Reeve up in P4. He is clawing his way through the field beautifully in that battle with Harris right now. He is a driver that I think we may have to look out for throughout the rest of this season. He is putting on a fantastic show currently. Was a driver that we had pinned as a pretty solid racer there after his performance in that sprint race, and he is proving it yet again. Fingers crossed that he doesn't have some kind of heartbreak here in the dying stages of this race. Less than 5 minutes to go here from this 45-minute race here. Hunter Reeve drops down to P5, but still not over yet. We have some hard battling all throughout this field and some great stuff to see.
Yeah, Harris might have taken that position a little early there. Reeve is going to play this one cool, I guess, but I think he probably had a crack at that overtake entering turn 2. So it's sometimes hard to hold yourself back when that draft is setting up a beautiful pass for you, but sometimes discretion's a better part of valor coming out of Parabolica. Breathe that throttle a little bit and bide your time in making that move, because you could easily get past back. That straightaway is so long.
I think it was Sun Tzu in The Art of War that said that a warrior's greatest virtue is his patience, and we see that so often here in these radicals, whether it be on the official broadcast here on Friday or whether it be here in this series. The patience is just so important. You can't get lost in the red mist and see some of these drivers go for really aggressive moves. You can't just get lost in that. You really need to pay attention, keep hitting your marks, and if you just keep it clean in these races, as we've seen with the amount of carnage we've seen in both of the races here tonight, just keeping it clean is so important, and getting a good result here in these Radical races, whether it be the officials or these much longer races here from the Radical Americas series. We have very little time left in this race, 41.5 minutes in, so I believe, if I'm not mistaken, doing some very quick and very poor maths in my head, we have about 3 laps to go, if I'm not mistaken, so I believe they'll be taking the 2 to go this time by. Hard-fought stuff all throughout this field. The battle continues here between Benelid, Solorzano, and Zuccarelli here. This is still some hard-fought stuff. Meanwhile, Reeve and Harris continue to swap positions there in P4 and P5. They're still fighting very hard. It's really hard. It's difficult to keep track of all the battles that we have here all throughout this field. It's nice to have if we had some very wide shots, we could just get both of these battles in one camera shot going down these long straightaways here at Monza, but sadly for us, we cannot do it. But I think, yeah, it's just hard stuff. I think we may get a replay of some action that was happening farther in the back. This is the move that Hunter Reeve pulled off to move back up into P4.
And look at the power of that draft. Just sucks him right up to the back of that Radical. Passes him like he's pulling an anchor. And Reeve here is going to stay left. He's going to cover the inside. Still has his competitor right behind him, all over him. And definitely at risk of getting the repass there. Plenty of time to get that done. And gosh, meanwhile, look at that gap up front. I told you Vieira was going to be able to take something out of Odo here. Wasn't what they needed, though, but Vieira has gotten that. Vieira and Harmon working together have gotten that 11-second gap down to about 7.5. Too little too late, but a fine effort by those two. And boy, I would sure like to be on the pit wall in Vieira's pit while he was sitting there with his car on jacks, Don't know if that was part of the plan or an error. Pretty sure Anope would say Nope. That did not want those tires. But interesting stuff here, and all these drivers are learning. The public server races for these radicals don't involve pit stops, tire or fuel strategy. So in these series that are just starting here over the next several months, we're going to be learning together about how these radicals perform when there is fuel and tire strategy at stake.
And I'll tell you what, we have a fantastic schedule ahead of us here between between now and October the 13th to round this season off. We've got some pretty hard-fought stuff here between now and the end of the season, but it looks like Ryan Odo may be able to pull off the sweep. He's going to be taking the white flag this time by. You can see the lap car jumping out of the way. Don't want to wreck the leader. That would be a very controversial incident, especially since we had the cameras on him. Maybe he realized that we had the cameras on him and tried to get out of the way there, heading at Parabolica, but Odo is going to be taking the white flag this time by. You can see the flagman waving it there, going down the start-finish straightaway. Odo, we are expecting it to be a much harder fought fight between himself and Vieira, but sadly I guess it was a small little mistake there from Vieira. Maybe it was some kind of intentional strategy call to try and claw his way through the field and be on much warmer tires, but it had to have been some kind of mistake because he lost so much time in taking those tires that I think Vieira just lost it, and it looks like he's going to be losing P2 here as Harman goes for a move heading into turn number 1. Vieira not really... We'll have to see. Maybe he'll join us here in the virtual commentary booth to have some words as he regains that P2 spot there. We gotta wonder if it was some sort of mistake to take those tires. It certainly looks like it, as it looks like he's going to finish well north of 5 seconds behind your winner, Odo, but there's still a lot to play for, knowing my luck. I probably just pulled off the worst commentator's jinx in the world, and Odo is going to be spinning wildly out of control on the track. There's some hard-fought stuff here. 3 wide coming out of the chicane. I never thought I would see it here in these radicals, but these drivers just tried to pull it off. They're going side by side. I think we saw some rally action there. The rally action off the screen from Ben Lid got forced off the track there from Solorzano and went for a quick little excursion through the gravel trap. That's some very hard fought stuff here in this fight. Looks like Zuccarelli will be able to hold off that challenge there. He still has, actually, I believe that's a lapped car right in front of Zuccarelli currently, so he's not... Actually, no, that's Harris. So Reeve has actually pulled away of this fight. Meanwhile, Odo is going to be taking the win here to kick this season off. He's pulling off the double, taking the sprint, and taking the feature races here from this first round of the Radical Americas Series here from 2024. Lucas Vieira finishing in a crushing second. It probably would have been his race if he didn't take those tires. He finishes in second. Harman finishing in fourth. Reeve, it looks like he'll be finishing in fourth. It's going to be a drag race here between Harris and Zuccarelli. Zuccarelli, I believe, will finish just behind Harris there to round out the top 6. Solorzano there finishes the race in P7. Benelid in 8th. All the drivers crossing the grid now. Richie Hearn, I believe, will actually be taking the final top 10 position here. He just did take the final top 10 position. So driver that I was kind of scared that I was going to mention too much considering my IndyCar background, which I will not get into at the risk of the last time a Radical driver mentioned that. I got very embarrassed on a broadcast, but still Richie Hearn, the IndyCar driver, finishes his race in P10, running at the top 10 of this field. We just have some more stragglers coming their way to the start-finish line now, but man, 45 minutes of really hard-fought stuff, some controversial incidents, shall we say, and some bizarre strategy options. There is a lot to unpack after that Radical race here at Monza.
There is a lot to unpack, and my goodness, that group that we were watching, Zuccarelli, Solorzano, and Benelid, Benelid just got wicked like a rented mule on that last lap. He lost 2 positions. He had a slight bobble there in Lesmos and kind of fell to the back of that train during that final lap. But yeah, great action today. I'm sure that both the drivers and the organizers would have hoped for a little cleaner action, especially at the beginning of the race. There's probably going to be some discussion about that and some caution about how to handle these squirrely little radicals on cold tires before a 45-minute race. But really outstanding stuff here, and great series, great season to look forward to, for sure.
Yeah, we have a great season to look forward to, and it kicked off here at Monza. Dramatic stuff from start to finish. Penalties involved, and man, it is Unbelievable stuff. I think we may have one last replay here. I believe this is actually, I believe that, my apologies there. That was not a replay. My fault there, but still, we had so much stuff going on throughout that race. I feel bad for our producer Josh. I've said this many times on all the broadcasts I do with him on Apex Racing TV, that he needs to be like a chameleon looking at about 8 different things at once to catch all the action, and this race was no different. I think we're going to get the results here in just a few moments time. You can see some nice donuts there on the start-finish line. From your winner, Ryan Odo, taking the checkered flag, 6.2 seconds ahead of Lucas Vieira there in P2. That's going to be Eric Harmon rounding out your podium. Hunter Reeve coming in, might be my mention for driver of the evening, finishes about 19 seconds back of the leaders there in P4. Mark Harris rounds out your top 5. Diego Zuccarella will finish this race in 6th. Solorzano will finish this race in 7th. That's Ben Lead in at P number 8 after that quick little drop back during that last lap. Ryland Richard will finish this race in 9th. He was involved in that fight, but dropped back a little bit after a mistake that we did not catch. Finishes this race about 3 seconds back of the next car. Richie Hearn rounds out your top 10 from tonight's action. That's going to be Jason Potter there in P11, Joe Jacklin in P12, and Nope there in P number 13. Abantes, who was a very hard charger at the start of this race, went for the lead very briefly and actually spun from P2 very early on into this race. He finishes in a somewhat disappointing P14 in the number 14 car. That's going to be Juan Macondo. I'm killing the pronunciations. I don't know what's wrong with me. He finishes this race in P15. That's going to be the number 244, finishing this race in 16th. Ohayon finishing in 17th, Yokel in 18th after that very long pit stop. I think it was 1:45 that he spent stopped there. That was just crushing to look at. He finishes this race in 18th, Clausing finishing in 19th, one of the last drivers to actually take the checkered flag, actually one lap down, so he was the only driver to finish this race one lap down. He finishes in 19th, Marias finishing in 20th, and Luis Perez did not actually take the start after bailing out of the iRacing session after a quick crash in that sprint race. And that concludes the results from this race. Wow, I think I think it's somewhat hard to kind of break down some of the action that we just saw, but I think we had some drivers to break it down as well. We have a driver here waiting in the interview waiting room, but their name in Discord is a little bit, shall we say, nondescript. I'm not sure who this driver is, so we'll drag them in and try and figure it out here. So I think I think we'll drag him in here real quick into the commentary booth. Thank you so much for joining us, whoever you may be. I don't see your name here in Discord, so who are you, mystery driver? I think
I am in here. I don't know if I'm supposed to be in here.
And
yes, I was just in the Radical race. Mayor Dehonoring.
alrighty, so we have our first driver here from the Radical race, and very dramatic stuff out there. So just talk us through it, and also I apologize for our very butchered pronunciation of your name all throughout that broadcast, but just talk us through the action that we saw here on track tonight.
Yeah, it was an amazing race. I'm obviously new here, so it was great to see what it was gonna look like for the race. I kind of went into it with no game plan, not knowing what to do. Eventually, about halfway through the race, I kind of picked it up, figured out what was going on. Ended up, I think I was running P4, made a mistake, had a little bit of an incident. Then I kind of settled in after that. Then we got to pit stops and tried to figure out a game plan for that. Got one and ended up spinning out a couple times on cold tires. And I think it was a good race though. Amazing.
I'll tell you what, it looked really hard fought from our perspective here in the commentary booth, and we saw a little bit of drama all throughout this race, do you think the closeness of the field just with that massive slipstream was the reason why we saw a little bit of drama and a little bit of action and drivers roughing each other up throughout tonight's races? Or do you think it was just some drivers trying to get the win here in the opening race of the season?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me on my part, definitely the draft was a massive play in this race today. Obviously, being at Monza with one of the longest straightaways on the calendar this year, but I think also some drivers definitely wanted to win. So there was some rough parts going down the straightaways, but I think everybody was playing it safe, especially going into the first round.
Now, I'll ask you this quick little question here, and this may be a little bit of a loaded question, so I apologize if it is, but what do you think of the fact that the officials decide to bar all you drivers from doing any sort of bump drafting here tonight? Do you approve of that, or do you kind of have a little bit of a dilemma about that?
No, I definitely approve of that because I don't really like to bump draft, especially in real life radical racing. And I think it's the same in the sim, right? You always want to be as close to real life as possible. So I definitely agree with the officials of no bump drafting.
I think we may see a little bit of bump drafting when the series returns here to Apex Racing TV at Sebring. So what are your thoughts heading into that race in a few weeks' time?
Yeah, Sebring is a wonder to drive at. I've had the privilege to drive at it before, and I think people will try to bump draft, but I think some people might be hesitant to, especially with the officials watching the racing.
I'll tell you what, that was a very exciting night of action here, a debut race from the Radical Americas series here in 2024, and fingers crossed the action all throughout the season will live up to the awesome stuff that we saw here at Monza tonight. So thank you so much for joining us here in the commentary booth. Is there anyone you'd like to give thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, I would like to thank, well, obviously I'm racing by myself, so I'd like to thank myself for being an amazing driver, but I'd also like to thank my parents who were able to be here and watch me racing while I'm on the sim.
There you go. You always got to thank the parents, and you got to thank me, myself, and I there for the other great driving that we had there from you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and fingers crossed that we see you throughout the rest of this Radical season, my friend.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
And that was a... Ooh. I think we had another driver waiting in the interview waiting room. It was Diego Zuccarelli, the hard charger from tonight's broadcast, and I believe he left us. Maybe had to take a pee or something like that. Who knows? We'll wait a little bit for him to rejoin this race. But I think JR, I think I'll ask you this question that I just asked the driver that we had here in the commentary booth. Do you approve of the fact that they banned the bump drafting here tonight?
Yeah, actually I do, Ron, because as our interviewee, whose name has already escaped me, it must be nighttime here where I am. It is. As the driver we just spoke to mentioned, they are not allowed to, or it's impractical to bump draft these cars in real life. And when we're in the sim, it's fun to do things that you couldn't do in real life, like donuts in the grass and things of that nature. But I think it can help with the immersion and help with the seriousness of it and the professionalism to restrict your strategies on track to things that you could do in real life. And clearly, although on Friday we did see a little bit of bump drafting in the public servers in our other broadcast, I kind of don't think these radicals could take a lot of that at speed. I think they would pick up body damage pretty quickly. So I think it makes sense for them to eliminate bump drafting in this type of car.
I'll tell you what, though, I'm a little bit mixed on the fact that we didn't have bump drafting here. It's me being like a hard-blooded American or something like that, but I think it would have been kind of cool to see those really high speeds. Maybe just see some drivers bump drafting in practice to say, hey, with the bump drafting, they will have hit about 185 miles an hour or something like ridiculous like that. Use it as kind of like an advertising gimmick for this race here. I will say, I don't think this series needs an advertising gimmick because that was awesome, the racing that we just saw, and I think, unfortunately, we won't have anyone else joining us to have a chat here after the race. I think we'll wrap things up, and I'll just ask you, JR, just last thoughts on the action that we saw here in Monza. Does this top what we saw here in the officials on Friday, or do you think this is a little bit, I don't know, I wouldn't say worse. I mean, it's still action-packed regardless, but just final thoughts on the action that we saw here tonight.
You know, I think the race was super interesting, and I think it laid a great foundation for what is coming ahead. And one big advantage that these drivers will have over just showing up at a race, even if it's semi-organized like our officials that we do on 2100 GMT Fridays on Apex Racing TV, is that they'll grow together, they'll learn together, and they will, you know, I'm sure there will be some discussion between the drivers about some of the incidents early on, and encouragement to kind of take it easy. Remember, it's a 45 lap race. Remember, you're on cold tires, and kind of clean it up a little bit. And so I think that the fact that, you know, we have a group here that will be racing together for months. I mean, this one goes well into the fall, starting here early in the spring. So I think that will give them an opportunity to grow together, get better together. And I think the racing that we're going to see on track is certainly going to be improving as we go through the season as a result.
I gotta imagine part of the reason why we saw a lot of these drivers racing each other so hard is just they wanted to have the bragging rights of taking the first checkered flag of the season. I think that's part of the reason why we saw that very hard racing. But as you said there, JR, we have a fantastic schedule of events ahead of us here, not only on Apex Racing TV, but from the series as well. We've got Sebring coming up on March the 10th. We've got Watkins Glen International coming up on April the 7th, and Interlagos, a Grand Prix layout on April the 28th. On May the 12th, we'll be heading to Barber Motorsports Park. Road America will be on June the 2nd, then on June the 23rd, we'll be heading to Oulton Park, which we always see some action-packed stuff there from the officials, so I gotta imagine that race is going to be badass to watch from start to finish during the summer. Then after that, we'll be heading over to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, a track that you visited in real life, JR, on numerous occasions, so I'm sure you're looking forward to that one as well. Phillip Island, that'll be on August the 18th. Right after that, then Brands Hatch on September the 8th. Sonoma Raceway, another track that you visited there, JR, on September the 29th. And then to round this season off, we'll be heading to the Nordschleife on October the 13th. I would hope to God that it's actually, no, it wouldn't be Friday the 13th because these broadcasts are on a Sunday. That just popped into my head. But still, it would be cool if it was a Friday the 13th broadcast at the Nordschleife. I don't know, maybe have a I don't know when the next October Friday the 13th is coming, but that'd be cool to have like a Halloween kind of themed broadcast here on Apex Racing TV. I'll have to pitch that idea to our boss here in the coming weeks. But still, drama from start to finish. Drivers crashing into each other, going off the track. It wasn't malicious at all, and all these drivers were just pushing it to the absolute limit, but still awesome stuff here from the season opening race of the Radical America series here on Apex Racing TV. And that is not the only action that we have here coming up on Apex. We've got action all around the clock from both the Rikmatech Touring Car Cup coming up this week on Monday. Tomorrow, that'll be some awesome action there. From Phillip Island, we also have the Ray Esports Series, Road America. That's going to be a good race to round off their season before they hit the runoffs in 2 weeks' time. That'll be on Tuesday. And then we have another 45-man race, that being at Bathurst for the S1 Racing GT3 Sprint Series. That's a series that I've covered ever since it started here on Apex Racing TV, and it is action-packed from start to finish. Speaking of Bathurst, we're going to be heading there for the officials later on this week, and I have a feeling that's going to be some really hard-fought stuff there. Week 11 of the Season 1 here in 2024. That is going to be some awesome stuff, so if you'd like to stay up to date on all the stuff here on Apex Racing TV, remember to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, do all the stuff that you know how to do on YouTube if you've used this website for about 5 minutes. As for tonight's broadcast, I think that just about does it. It's a hell of a way to kick off this season, and I hope you can all join us once again with the series returns here on Apex Racing TV for both the European and America's series on March the 10th at Sebring. So for myself, Ron Mullins, J.R. Gregory joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching, and have a great rest of your night.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the